Hello and welcome to the Mental Health Advantage podcast, where HR, benefits, and total rewards leaders explore the future of workplace well-being. I'm your host, Sokoler, founder and CEO of Journey, the leading proactive mental health solution for modern companies. In each episode, we bring you expert insights, real-world strategies, and candid conversations on creating healthier, more productive workplaces. Make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. Now let's dive in. Hello and welcome to the Mental Health Advantage, where we explore how leaders are building cultures of mental well-being and performance. Today, I'm joined by my friend Neil Hunter, partner and chief learning officer at Deloitte Canada. How you doing, Neil?
Doing good. Good to see you again, Steve.
Good to see you too. So, Neil is a strategic, values-driven leader with a passion for human capital development and lifelong learning. And his work is shaping how Deloitte builds a culture of continuous growth and support. I think that's all true. That all sounds about right?
Aspiring to, yes.
So you've worked across government, academia, energy, and now at Deloitte. What originally drew you to focus on learning and talent development?
Yeah, my career actually started I was a church pastor for a number of years. And so this fascination with people achieving their potential, whether it be in a spiritual context or in a work context, has always been part of the thing that I'm fascinated with, and helping, what helps people thrive, obviously in service of my own journeys, but being really passionate as a deep sense of personal purpose to help others unlock that potential and be able to thrive in whatever circumstances they're given. So that's driven me really. I came to see learning as a real lever to be able to get to that place of helping people unlock where they want to go and drive their own sense of personal purpose as well.
I love that. And I did not know that. So, they say you learn something new every day. This was my learning for the day. So you've said in the past that learning is more than skill development, right? It's foundational to employee experience. And how do learning programs directly impact a topic that I know you're passionate about, which is employee well-being?
Yeah, I would actually take it further, Stephen, and say as humans, we are wired, built from the beginning to grow. And so it's our natural state is to be growing. And in really any living organism exists in a world where growth is positive. Where you see atrophy or you see lack of growth, usually it's because there's an environment that's not conducive and something in that environment is constraining it. So our natural state as humans is to grow. And so I think learning, in stressful or ambiguous environments, that ability to grow or develop yourself can be stifled, and that is where learning really plays a key role in terms of understanding how you can get through some of those things and how we can create brain-friendly environments where learning can help breakthroughs, help you get to a place where you find conditions for growth, the psychological safety, the clarity, connection, all of these things. I also think learning is a very social activity, and so a big part of well-being is that connection to others in the human experience. And learning facilitates that a lot of times, and the sharing that goes on and the vulnerability together. When people feel like they're learning and connected, they feel more capable, hopeful. They have a more positive view of the future. So all of that's a big connection to, I think, the human experience being viewed as a positive, well construct. Our talent value proposition at Deloitte is anchored on two sort of generative drives that are known in research to lead to happiness. And the first one is agency. And in almost everything you experience, especially in the learning space, you've got choice. You've got agency. Sometimes you have an A or a B choice. Other times you've got a suite of 5, 6, 7 things you can choose from. But that choice is a big part of the human experience that adds to the well-being. Where you feel like you have no choice and you're constrained, it usually impacts your sense of purpose and well-being as well. The second generative drive that we anchor a lot of our stuff on is gratitude. And that the more time we spend thinking about the things that we are grateful for, especially in that learning space around the opportunities that we get to stretch and grow and learn, that gratitude feeds a very positive mindset that in the future sets you up for taking bigger risks and trying new things, which again feeds your sense of capability and competence and drives well-being as well. So there's a direct correlation for me in all of those things of learning and well-being and wellness so very well connected and the impact of it.
Can you tell us, for those that may not know, what is the focus of a chief learning officer, and how does that touch employee mental health? And obviously there's the benefits component and total rewards. Like, where does this fit into the whole picture?
I mean, I think if you talk to any chief learning officer, there's a nuance to everybody's, what's the scope and scale. The mandate I have is summed up in 3 words of build better humans. And that sounds like a rather arrogant mandate, but it really is focusing on building whole person opportunities, whole person development, not just better, in our case, Deloitte practitioners or Deloitte leaders, but better humans who go on into lead in business, government, and industry. So we're very focused on the whole person development. It's why we've launched things like chef school, improv classes, mechanics class. It's developing skills and capabilities far outside of what you would traditionally think are the skills that you need to be at Deloitte: audit, tax, advisory type things. And it's the bet that better humans who are developing their whole selves are more interesting to our clients, that we can build relationships that span not just the role you're in today, but the relationship can span the growth that both our clients and our practitioners have in their careers, and they can stay connected on things other than tax, but actually have a relationship on things like rock climbing or baking bread or whatever it is, that you connect as humans first, and then the skills or the technical stuff that you have is a nice to have as well. The mandate is really to put into the system, create the environment where that kind of learning can be going on, that we reward it, that we provide avenues for it, not outside of desk, but actually in the flow of work. So the mandate includes, yes, our technical learning, our regulatory requirements for learning, our formal learning experiences, whether they be in person, live, or virtual. It also, though, includes most of the development in our firm happens through apprenticeship and in the flow of work, watching other leaders. You do, I'll watch, we'll do together kind of experiences and growing that way. And then our coaching remit, which also falls under mine, of how do we actually bring alongside mentors and coaches, in addition to the apprenticeship opportunities, to help people navigate through the challenges and experiences that they're positioned with. All helping make sure our folks stay in the stretch zone, not the panic zone, and we don't let them stay in the comfort zone. So my job is to try to really push people to that space of growth, not panicking, but not feeling so comfortable that they can just exist and not contribute to the firm's long-term goals.
I love that. So many questions come up, but 2 specifically. One is, how do you measure success there? And I say that as somebody who, when we offer proactive mental health support to companies, they often use some tools that are, I think, accurate, and some that are a little bit more arbitrary. So I'd be curious to learn there. And then the second question is, as you mentioned, the apprenticeship, what does that look like now in terms of work from home and work from the office? And I'm not sure if different offices across Canada have different kind of programs, or if everybody's back in office. So I would love to tackle those 2 things.
Yeah, 2 loaded questions. If I can't tell you how many, there was a period of time, now it's every conference you go to, AI is in every presentation, probably in some form. But if you step back 18 months ago, every conference had something about return to office or that whole hybrid piece, and the debate that's there around what problem are we trying to solve, and is it about working from home, or is it about what kind of a relationship do you have with your employees? So I'll go there in terms of where we've landed, but the measurement question is a good one in terms of how do we know, or how are we measuring whether this is working, or is it making, are the investments paying off in terms of impact? 2, traditionally L&D has been, the measurement strategy was really around, I don't mean this pejoratively, butts in seats. It was all about how many people can we get in the course, with the assumption that if they sat in that seat, that they actually learned something. But we never measured that far beyond maybe a 3-month check in to see, hey, do you remember anything you learned? Yes or no? But that was secondary in many cases. And Kirkpatrick's sort of scale, most organizations would have been measuring, experience, the amount of people receiving the experience. experience. We've taken a very different approach, which is, I don't want to say I don't care about that, but the link for me, the magic is there's some learning metric, the correlation between a learning metric around people who had a certain type of experience, exposure, education, with a talent metric, their retention, their succession, their progression, and the business outcomes, revenue, risk avoidance, quality, all these other, we put together those three things. And so we don't really report out anything that can't show a trifecta of correlation, that this intervention played out in this way in a talent experience way, and this way in a business result component. If I'm not solving for a business problem, we shouldn't be doing the intervention. That's basically how we prioritize our investments. So the interesting story is around, for example, chef school. If I proactively tried to predict what the value proposition would have been by offering chef school on our business results, I probably would have been thrown out of the C-suite, right? So I didn't ask permission on that one. We just did it. And then the results played out in a really interesting way. So, for example, first of all, during that program, there was no mention of any connection to Deloitte work. In other words, while you're chopping up this spinach, the way you chop this up, think about how you're doing your tax work and the correlation of it. It's not that. The program was very much go to the market, select the food. It was focused on how do you create the best possible experience for you and your guests in the food that you serve. What was interesting is in the debrief, our practitioners made tremendous connections around, for example, how important attention to detail was in creating the best possible experience at the table, and that they recognize that they weren't applying that in the same way to their work, and their attention to detail needed to go up. How that played out is interesting correlation between those that went to chef school and our compliance regulatory training scores, much higher for those that went to chef school in an A/B test. So those that went and participated were far higher in their compliance scoring than those that didn't. And so there's interesting correlations we start to make that are where the measurement magic is, the story and the narrative that can be told, as opposed to this many people went to chef school and the score for the facilitator was, and the score, that's interesting to us in the L&D space, but not to the business. So aligned with that, we are very much in the place of we hire really smart people. And so when it comes to mandating back to work, and many of our competitors and our clients are putting out mandates, we feel there's very few, given our focus on agency, very few value propositions where mandating something yields a positive outcome in the long term in the relationship between the employer and the employee. So we've approached this working where you best do your work, from giving that agency to our employees and our leaders to determine there are certain types of work that are best done in proximity to the client. So whether it's at the client site or in a team construct, in a room, sketching things out and using the in-person construct where connection is key in person that you can't do effectively virtually, versus there's some constructs where working virtually is the best use of time and the most productive. So letting our leaders and our people determine that by the work, let the work drive the location instead of being prescriptive. We need you in the office 3 days a week. Professional services has always had, before pre-COVID, it was like you're on the road from Monday to Thursday, and then on Friday we spent time in the Deloitte office, but most of our time was at client site. And so as clients go back into their offices, we will spend more time with them there, because that's where they want to be and we want to be where they want. But it's more driven by the work than it is an arbitrary, I think people are more productive in this location or that location.
Thanks for listening to the first half of the episode. I hope you're walking away with some valuable insights. I want to take a quick pause to tell you about my book, The Mental Health Advantage. If you found this conversation useful, you'll find 300 more pages packed with strategies, insights, and real-world applications. Grab your copy on Amazon. Just check the show notes for the link. And if you're looking for a more comprehensive mental health solution for your company, let's chat. You'll find another link in the show notes to reach out and explore how Journey can help you. Now back to the show. We went, as you probably know, we were based in New York and in meatpacking, not far from here. And then the pandemic hit and people moved wherever they moved. And, like many mental health companies, we grew a lot. We started hiring best available talent because back then nobody knew how long the pandemic was going to last. And kind of hard to put the toothpaste back in the tube for us because we have folks all over in Vancouver and New York. And, and we think a lot about how do we mentor employees, especially younger employees, where having that experience is really valuable. And you don't have, we're just going to grab a quick coffee, or you're going to overhear something, or you're going to be in the office early or late and get that time with the senior leader. That
serendipity, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I think you get intentional. There's a lot less serendipity and a lot more intentionality required to create opportunities in an environment where trust is high and you can share ideas and concepts without it being formal all the time, or let's have coffee at such and such a time. It was more like we met around the water cooler, or we met at the coffee machine, or in the old days, it was out at the smoke pit where we had the real talk, right? It's what are the new places where that happens so that we don't lose the power of that, because there is something really powerful about being able to just shoot the proverbial and get to the like, what do you really think? I used to, as I was at the time, I was HR business partner at the University of British Columbia. And when I really wanted to know what people thought, I would just go hang out down where everybody grabbed a smoke and listen and talk. I didn't smoke myself, which was kind of odd. But I would just go listen to what's going on, what are they pissed off about today? And it would be intel that I would not get. There's no focus group survey or anything where the trust would be that high to share it. And so finding the new intentional spaces where people feel psychologically safe to share and to grow and learn is the work that has to be done. We can't be lazy. I think one size fits all when it comes to that.
Yeah, I think that's right. We're exploring now something that has this spatial learning component. It's pretty interesting, actually. It was something that was built actually for school systems and then was really helpful for neurodivergent employees. And we're thinking, how do we, I think the challenge that we have, and I'm sure you have this in some regard, is when you put like a meeting on somebody's calendar, it automatically feels a little more formal, right? And so how is that, going to work when you're asking a person to show up the same way they would in the smoking room, or, if you're grabbing a coffee, or if you're just in the office, late night and there's just a few of you and you're shooting the proverbial, right? Like, so how do you create those types of environments? But I actually have I want to go back to something you had said before, when you mentioned that folks who had gone to chef school ended up, I think you had said were a little bit better in terms of some of what was the net impact? Yeah, compliance. Thank you. Did you find any other links with other types of things? Like you had mentioned improv leads to better listening or better customer service or anything like that?
Yeah, we made a correlation. The improv classes in our sales metrics. So those that, the yes and skills that you would learn in an improv directly translated into the negotiations in a sales, and being open to be quick on your feet and able to go with the flow of that conversation gave, I think, our junior practitioners more confidence to wade into those conversations as opposed to sitting on the sidelines and letting the senior folks have all of it. So they were far more involved in the sales cycle, but also much better at connecting with what the client was looking for versus, hey, I need to get you to this place. It was much more of a collaborative co-create piece. The mechanics class one's interesting because we haven't done a lot of them, but what really fascinated me was who showed up, who was interested. So each of these, you have to send in a quick video of why you should be in the cohort. That's, your interest. And the demographic, you would think of like who would be attracted to go to a mechanics class. And it was entry level. It's not like, we're changing a transmission. It was much more of like, how do you change the oil? How do you, all around your car, how do you take care of your car? It was predominantly signed up by our females who had felt like this is a skill. My dad taught me a little bit, but I want to take it to the next level. And story after story of some of our female practitioners who are showing up at garages and shops and getting sold, you need a whole new this or that. And they had the ability to call BS and say, I actually don't, I'm going to go get a second opinion, right? Because they had enough knowledge to know that that's not a thing, or I need a second opinion. So again, confidence in situations that previously would have been something where they might have been shy to establish their own position and things. They've developed a sense of confidence. That muscle and the neuroplasticity that's built that pathway around, actually, I'm going to stand in my space here and take the stage, has paid off for a lot of our folks in their leadership journey, and staying curious rather than giving up and acquiescing on things that I don't know much about it, so I'll just give in. They're actually staying curious and asking great questions.
What interests me is you had mentioned that people have to submit a video in order to go and participate. But what interests me is, are there ways to use this in ways that might support a person's growth in a way that might be unexpected for them? So in other words, the salesperson not saying, oh, I want to do improv because of XYZ, but a manager saying, hey, we think this would be a lot of fun for you and go do this. And then obviously it goes and also addresses that person might be more rigid on the phone, or that person, or somebody's having an issue with compliance, and you can beat them over the head with the importance of it. Or you can say, hey, why don't you sign up for this cool cooking class? And then is it ever used in that way, or at least within the Deloitte culture, it's something where the person themselves is opting in?
Yeah, right now we're keeping it like it's a shared mission, and a shared mission part. The individual really has to be motivated, whatever that motivation is, to get the benefits that I was talking about, right? There were a few at Chef School that made no connection and there was no correlation, but they also participated in my wife said I should be here. I need to learn my cooking game if we're going to stay married. So they felt forced into it. I think the same is true if your leader is telling you, you should go and do this. There's a very different opportunity. It's different to invite versus try to convince somebody that they should. So we're still in that invite agency space. At the same time, I think where we have skill gaps, doing it in an untraditional way does take away a little bit of the resistance sometimes around if somebody's given some radical, direct feedback that they don't have great listening skills, sending them to listening class, like remedial. It's like sending people to anger management because they've had a blow up. Your head, you're facing it head on, as opposed to going into improv. You are acutely listening for what the person is saying because you're next, and you do build those muscles and figure out how to apply it in different contexts. So rather than saying you have weak listening skills, go to essential listening classes. Let's go to improv. It makes people go, okay. That'll be interesting. But we haven't really pulled that lever yet.
Yeah. Okay. Something to think about.
Yeah.
So you've described Deloitte as a learning organization. What does that look like in practice, and how does it support people through uncertainty and change?
Yeah. So different definitions of learning organization. But for us, the organization as a whole, so this amorphous blob, is made up of individuals. Obviously, for an organization to be a learning organization, the components of it need to be learning and growing. But what I mean by that is Deloitte learns from, it's 180 years old. It's learned from its making the mistakes that it has, and the individuals learn from each other. So we have something called the Knowledge Exchange, which is a global repository of all the work that we've done with clients over time, obviously scrubbed for privacy and details, but we can learn from work that was done in Australia on a similar client, but a little bit different. We can learn from each other in things that we've tried, and we continually up our game based on those interactions that we have. We're learning from clients every day around some amazing things that they're doing that we had not really seen before. It's the power that the firm has of being able to interact with so many global companies or companies around the globe. So we are upping our game as a whole, and the individual components of it are continuously learning. It is in our culture. As I said, apprenticeship is in our DNA, and every leader at the firm recognizes it's their role and job to develop the next generation. So it's a continuous construct of everything that we do. It's who am I bringing along, and what can we learn from that when we hit obstacles or make mistakes, which happens all the time. So it's an interesting juxtaposition, though, because as a 180-year-old firm, we also have deep-rooted philosophy in risk aversion, and our accounting roots are deep. And on the other hand, we have this innovation advisory practice that's pushing new things. It's especially come to light as AI has become, it's pushing us far beyond our comfort zone and risk tolerance typically to get into. So it's stretching us, and we're having to learn. And let's face it, professional services is going through an existential crisis of knowledge will no longer be the differentiator. It's going to be the ultimate leveler AI from a knowledge perspective. The question is then, what is our differentiator, and can we evaluate? That's a big part of being a learning organization. We can't stay static and have to continue to grow and develop new offerings and new constructs to add value to our client conversations.
And to piggyback on that, how do you create space for this when there's so much client work to do? There's such a high performance element of the culture. How do you create space for apprenticeship, for growth, for mental health within the culture at Deloitte?
If I say anything every day at Deloitte, it's learning is work, work is learning. These are not separate things that compete necessarily for time. I do think people often associate learning with in-classroom time or time on a course digitally, where the bulk of the learning that takes place at Deloitte is doing the work. It's in the process of the work. So the time where you're billable and at client site, you're learning a ton. One of the most pronounced examples of this is we were exploring a little bit the value of our Deloitte University, which is it is time where people come out of work and go to have like rocket fuel learning happen, experiential, learning that takes place in the classroom where they can focus. And we were talking with a focus group of practitioners, one of whom had been at the firm for 3 years and had never had an opportunity to go to Deloitte University, and was lamenting about, characterized it, saying, I have not had an opportunity to learn since I've been here. That practitioner in the 3 years had been promoted 4 times and was now leading a piece of work. And they said, I just want to challenge, you are a very different practitioner 3 years into this. And that was because you learned all the way along. You have been in the crucible of learning. The fact that you haven't had this particular type of learning experience is not the measure of whether you've had access to learning. So it's that reframing of where and how does learning actually happen that's been the real power of the Deloitte practitioner in the firm. And the value proposition we offer is you are going to learn a lot, because we put you in the situations, in the stretch zone. You're in the stretch zone every day that you're at this firm. And it's not for everyone. As a result of that, it does stretch people, and they feel that sense of burnout and things, because traditionally professional services, if you worked 60, 80 hours, that's almost the ethos of in the past. It's not as much today. And where we see burnout, it's often more because they're doing a type of work that doesn't connect to their sense of purpose. Where there's purpose and connection, I hear a lot of leaders saying, well, this next generation lacks grit type of statements. And no, they don't actually. If they're given something that connects to, like, for example, many of our folks work over the weekends on personal passion projects, contributing to the community, developing underprivileged youth, lots of things that they will put in the effort. It's not that they're lazy. It's that it needs to have a connection to purpose for them to put in the effort. And I really admire that has been as developed as it is in this next generation, of course, where for many of us, we just did what we were told because that's how you keep a job. Today, there's another job. If you're not connected to what I'm interested in, and that's keeping people well as a result, because they do not feel like they don't have agency and choice.
Right. We've evolved quite a lot societally from our parents' generation of you work at a place for 30 years and you retire with the pension and the gold watch to, our generation, which is, I don't even know how you describe it, but, you work, and if you work 80 hours or 100 hours and you sleep under your desk, that's just what you do. That's just the way it is, right?
Yeah, and it's a badge of honor. It was a badge of honor.
Yeah.
The sad life you have. But that's, for some though, if you're passionate for a period of time in your life, all more power to you. There are folks in our remit that love what they do, and they're working 80 hours a week, and they have to breathe every once in a while. But if you told them you can't work that much, they'd be very frustrated because they want to get in there. It's, again, we hire smart people. Let's make sure we have an environment where they have, when they signal, I'm going to slow down a bit, that's not attributed to negative. And when they want to ramp it up, it's also not attributed to negative. That's part of the choice that you've got.
Yeah, for sure. I can't believe we're basically at time and we've barely scratched the surface of the stuff we wanted to talk about. But I do want to ask you one question, which is, you had shared some examples before of different training and programs that really helped employees with different skills, like the cooking class and the compliance. Any examples of or stories where learning or coaching made a meaningful difference on a team or an individual as it pertains to mental health?
We launched a program 8 months ago now called Enduring Human Capabilities. And we recognized that if we kept on the track we were on today, our tech skills, our technical skills are going to outstrip our human skills. And recognizing that the future of professional services is really the differentiator is going to be in those human skills, not in the technical skills. We can train people on SAP, AI tools, etc. Those are trainable, but the real power, the superpower, if our people are a product, which we believe we are in professional services, that's what we need to up our game on. So things like curiosity, divergent thinking, connected teaming, emotional intelligence, these things that everyone has innately in them, but it's, can we unlock another level of that we really went hard into about 8 months ago? And we started small. And now there's a wait list of thousands of people trying to get into. We've got 20 offerings a month, and we still can't get enough people in through these programs because of the word of mouth that you need this. This is good for you as a human. And how empowering it was for those that went through to recognize, I have these skills and I can develop them. And that's the real for folks, is that I could develop these skills, and these are the things that will be rewarded and valued in the future. And they're very much about be things, not necessarily do things, right? Being more curious. Yes, there are tactical things that looks and feels like, but it's a mindset. These are really helping. And to your question, the number one thing we hear feedback is, what I just learned is really great for work, but it's also helping me with my wife, my relationship with my wife, or with my kids, or with my parents. As many of our folks, the sandwich generation, are really stressing out about how to support their parents who are aging and unable to sort of survive. So we're seeing people apply these things, develop these skills, and find great applications for their own mental health and well-being as well.
I love that. Well, sadly, we are at time. I feel like we could have talked for many more hours. We're just scratching the surface, but I appreciate you. I appreciate you as a friend. I appreciate what you're doing, how you're leading with heart and clarity and authenticity. And thank you for sharing how, learning really drives not just performance, but also deeper well-being and just generally improving people's mental health. So Neil, thank you so much for being here, and thanks for everything you do.
Thank you. Likewise, Stephen. You're a valued thought partner and friend, and I learn a lot from you. So let's keep doing what you're doing too.
Thank you, sir. All right. Enjoy the day. Thanks everybody for joining us, and have a wonderful day. Thanks for spending this time with us. We know you're busy. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to subscribe to the Mental Health Advantage and leave a review. Thanks so much, and have a beautiful day.